In this video, we're going to learn about something called a for loop. A for loop is actually really common with most programming languages, and Swift has their own unique little take on how a for loop works. So what a for loop does, or really any loop, it's designed to repeat a specific line of code multiple times, sometimes with a slight difference. But essentially, you're repeating the same text several times, or the same command several times. So what we do here, what the plan here is we're going to go through the shopping list we have with milk, eggs, bread, lettuce, and apples, and we're going to output a console statement that says that we're going to buy milk, we're going to buy eggs, we're going to buy bread, etc. So let's try this. Let's do it the wrong way first. So I am going to buy milk, and then I am going to buy eggs, and then etc., repeating the same thing over and over, writing it 5 times, which can get kind of annoying and obnoxious. And if you had like 10 or 15 or 20 items on the shopping list, then you really wouldn't want to have to write this thing 10, 15, 20 times. It would take a while. So instead what you can do is use a for loop where you do this. I'm going to double click on Swift for statement just to pre-populate this thing right here. This right here, this is always going to be the name of the array that you're looping through, so I'm going to just paste it in there like so. This one right here, item, you can choose whatever variable name you want. It's completely your choice. I'm going to call it X, just for my reasons. And then what you'll do in this body of the loop is you're going to create your print statement. So print, and I am going to buy something. So go ahead and reference the variable. So what this means is this X is going to represent each one of these items in the array. So every time this for loop iterates, it goes through each individual item in this shopping list array. So the first time the for loop goes through and does its thing, it will reference the milk item. That milk item will be put into the X variable, and as a result, it'll say I'm going to buy whatever X is. In this case, I'm going to buy milk. And then the for loop will repeat itself, so the second time through it'll say I'm going to buy eggs. And then the third time it repeats itself, it'll say I'm going to buy bread, and then lettuce, and then apples. So this for loop will go through itself 5 times, and each time through it'll go with milk, and then eggs, and then bread, and then lettuce, and then apples. And as you probably saw down here in the console, it's done just that. It's repeated the exact same line of text 5 times, but just replacing the item that's being bought. So that's a really basic example of how to create a for loop, how to use a for loop to work with an array. Normally arrays and for loops go hand in hand, so if you're going to be using arrays, you're probably going to be using a for loop as well. So just make sure to know both of these tools very well. I'm going to go ahead now and create another array. I'm going to pause the video while I do this, and when I'm back, I'll show you what we'll do with this new array. Alright, we are back, and this is the array I decided to create. It's an array that contains grades that certain students have earned. I have 8 grades right here for 8 different students, and what we're going to do here are 3 things. The first thing is we're going to get the average overall grade. We're going to determine how many students passed, and then we'll determine how many students failed. So how do we do this? Well, let's again start with the for loop, and like so, we'll take the array name, put it right there, and I'm just going to call this grade. I can call it X or grade or whatever I want, but I'm going to call it grade just to make it mean something. And then in our code, every time this loop iterates through, we're going to do something. So I'm just going to do a standard thing like print a message that says this student earned a grade of, and then grade. And then we're also going to have to do some sort of logic that determines what the overall average grade is and how many people failed and how many passed. So we're going to go ahead and create a counter variable and we're going to call it total, and we're going to make it a double, and we're going to set it to start at 0. So what's the purpose of this variable total? Well, we want to calculate the average overall grade for all the students combined. So what we need to do is we need to get the total of all 8 of these grades, 74 plus 98 plus 25, etc., etc., etc. Once we get the total, we'll divide by 8, 8 being the number of grades we have. And that will give us the average overall grade. And this variable total is going to allow us to keep a running total of 74 plus 98 plus 25 plus etc. We're also going to have a running total for a number of people who are passing. So I'll say num pass, and this can be an integer, and we'll start this at 0. And we'll also have num fail, also an integer. And in case you're wondering, the reason why we're making this a double is because later on, when we calculate the average is going to be some sort of uneven number. I'm sure it's going to be like, maybe 80.2 or 75.4, something like that. So we'll want to make sure the decimals are visible, and for that reason we're going to include a double, because we have to have a double data type if we want the decimals to be visible. So here we go. So here is the current output for our for loop. We have the student earn a grade of 74, 98, 25, 88, etc., etc. So this is already looping 8 times. Totally awesome. What we can do now is we can go ahead and add the value of this grade to our running total, like so. So what we'll do here is take total and do a plus equals and then put grade. So we're going to add grade to that. We need to add one thing first, though, to make this error message that's about to appear go away. Take a note that this right here, this is an integer, because all these items in the array are integers. And this, on the other hand, this total, this is a double. You cannot add an integer to a double. Remember, you can't add an integer to a double, you can't add double to an integer. You can only combine doubles, or you can only combine integers. So there's a quick fix you can use to, bypass this issue, and that is to convert the integer into a double before you add it to the total. And you can do it like this, using a simple method. And so this integer is now converted into a double, and then gets added to the total grade like so. Awesome, right? Alright, next what we want to do is basically once this for loop is completed, we will have added each and every individual grade to the total variable up here. So we'll have the total sum of all 8 of these numbers stored in this variable. So what we'll do is we'll say, let's create a new variable that says average grade, and we'll make that equal to total divide by, and we're going to divide that by 8, or rather the number of items in this array. So we can either say divide by 8, or we can say more accurately, and this is the better way to do it, is you can just take the name of the array up here and just retrieve the count property, and that will give you the number of items in that array. And then lastly, keep in mind that this right here is an integer, so we need to turn this into a double, like so. And now all the errors are away, and we see that the average grade is 71.875. We can go ahead and print this to say the average student grade is average grade. And there we go. Boom. We have completed this task right here. Now we need to determine how many students passed and how many students failed. Well, we can accomplish this using an if-else statement. Going back to a few videos in the past, if we're going to create a conditional statement that defines what it means to pass the class. So a student passing a class means that they need to score a minimum of 60%, because the 60 percentile means that you have a D, 70s is a C, 80s is a B, 90 is an A. Anything below 60 is considered to be enough. So, if grade is greater than or equal to 60, then what we'll do is this little counter variable right here that determines, or that states how many people pass the class, all we have to do is increase this variable by +1. So we've got num pass plus equals 1. And then if this particular conditional statement is false, then that means the students have failed, so we can put that into an else statement and say that num fail is increased by +1. Got it? So again, if the grade is passing, if it's 60% or greater, then we're going to increase our passing grade counter by +1. And if that's false, if it is less than 60, then we're going to increase our failing grade counter by +1. So down here, we can issue more print statements that say print a total of, and then the so was it num pass students have passed, and then same thing with fail. So as a result, what we have here is a total of 6 students have passed and a total of 2 students have failed. So what, following the logic, the very first time we pass through this for loop, the 74 will increment like so. Same thing with 98, it'll also increment like so. 25 is going to go down here and increase num fail. 88 will increase num pass. 55 will increase num fail. And then 78, 95, and 62 will each increment num pass. So that's a really quick demo on how to use a for loop to obviously print several statements with small changes, like so. We're printing these statements. We also showed you how to calculate an average value. So this is considered to be array processing. That's the term associated with this. It's called array processing. We're processing to determine some sort of value or some sort of result. And then we also learned how to get a running total. Actually, all 3 of these are running totals. But in these 2 cases, with num pass and num fail, we just output the result of the running total. Whereas with this one, with line 9, we use that to calculate an average grade, and then we output that result down here. So I know this video was probably kind of quick, but this was using a lot of concepts that you should already be familiar with. You should already know this operator, you should already know if-else statements, you should already know dividing. What you did not know how to do was to convert something to a double, so that was new. But you already know string interpolation, like so, basic printing, creating a global variable up here. So I hope this video was useful, and of course for loops are incredibly common, so just make sure you're aware of how they're used, the syntax, and how you can use them to work with and bring information or pull information out of arrays. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.